Hey guys, it's Coach Herb. I just wanted to go over your assignment from yesterday. We began talking about the Gunpowder Empires. You watched a video and you were supposed to begin reading from this document about the three different Gunpowder Empires, the Ottomans, the Safavids, and the Mughals. And as you were reading, you were supposed to analyze, why they were called that. Why did they get called the Gunpowder Empires? And you had a graphic organizer to fill out as you read. You had a couple primary source documents that were from that time period and some that were not from that time period. But you were supposed to fill out this graphic organizer as you went along with it, and hopefully you did. But we'll go over some of these things today. That way you have a good idea, and I want to make sure you get everything you're supposed to for your test. Make sure that you're also filling in the study guide from the graphic organizers and readings that you're doing in class. But the first question asks, what is the gunpowder, or what is a gunpowder empire, and provide both definitions. Well, as I read through there, I kind of came up with these ideas that the term was used to best describe new forms of states where artillery and other firearms played a big role in their growth, expansion, and organization. Also, Islamic groups or outside of the normal Islamic region that use gunpowder to extend their control over territories that were less advanced. So that's how it was defined in your article. And so hopefully you can see that in the first one. You can break that down. But these 15th, 16th century powers came to power through the use of gunpowder. And that leads right into the second question. Why did the Ottoman Safavids and the Mughals, or Muslims, why are they considered gunpowder empires? Well, a bunch of different ways for the Ottomans. They acquired muskets, and due to the acquisition of muskets, they were able to drive out many of the rebels that were in the land, and they controlled Turkey in 1414. They were the longest lasting gunpowder empire as well because of this. They used artillery in battle. They coordinated that with the use of cavalry, and their elite infantry corps called Janissaries, who were also armed. And so they became the best trained infantry force in the world, and were the first gun corps to wear uniforms, corps. So they used it in a lot of different ways, but mainly in battle. And they were able to extend their control across 3/4 of the Mediterranean seacoast. They would survive until the First World War, and we'll talk about them later on. The Safavids, very similar, used firearms for artillery, musketeers, different things of that sort. They used cannons for artillery as well. And they had an English advisor who trained them, who helped him reorganize. Shah Abbas of the Safavids had an English advisor who helped reorganize and train his army. They divided them into 3 different corps, the slaves, the musketeers, and the artillerymen, and all were paid from the treasury. So it was a first, very strong, personal, professionalized, and central administration organizing the army, which made them more organized. And so that made them a better fighting force. Very elaborate system of communication, and they were paid to fight, so they fought fairly well. The last group there is the Mughals, and they used it, and Babar had the expertise of Quili, who coached the military with Ottoman techniques. So this Ottoman came over and taught the Mughals techniques, and they were able to be victorious in Central Asia. A combination of horse cavalry and cannons. They used infantry with muskets, and then they had heavy artillery. And all these things, it was rare for any force to engage the Mughals in a pitched battle because they were worried about the cannon fire and the horse cavalry. So it was used to make these fighting forces and these gunpowder empires better, and they did dominate during the 15th and 16th centuries. 3, the question asks, list what these 3 gunpowder empires have in common besides the fact that they use gunpowder. Well, 1, they all started in Asia. If we read through there, you can kind of see that all their ideas come from that. They all practiced siege warfare using, cannons and different artillery like that. They were absolute monarchs. They had an emperor. They had a sultan or a shah. All had disputes over successions. We didn't get into that, but as you probably saw in the video, you saw that Aurangzeb constantly had to fight down rebellion. So did Akbar and many other ones in the Mughal Empire. They relied heavily on agriculture and the taxation of it. They relied on trade. They were all Muslims. Rules with Islamic laws and how they did it. A highly centralized government, but created bureaucracies that helped control the empire. They brought in golden ages of culture, spread religion by allowing religion. They incorporated religion, especially the Safavids, who are known for their cultural blending. Um, their nomadic Turk cultures is where it all originated. They did have slavery, so you have that issue there. Their cavalry, their horse trained troops were elite, and they created groups within their armies. So it wasn't just a soldier and a general, it was many different groups. So you have the division of the armies there. And so there's a lot of different ways that these groups relate to each other. Your second task was to go through the primary source documents and determine whether it was a primary source or a secondary source. Remember that we talked about a primary source is a source that is from that time period, written by somebody from that time period, a speech by somebody from that time period. A secondary source is a source written about something, but not from that time period. It could come later on, much later, or just a few years later, but they didn't live through those times, so it's secondhand knowledge. But the first one was a document on the Ottomans, and it says, according to the passage, what is needed to make a healthy empire. And you're supposed to explain in your own words and use textual evidence. Some of the things that you could have included is that people should be protected. The people should be protected, to remove injustices, focus on prosperity of the people. Again, very people focused. Protecting the property and lives of travelers. You needed to be men of consequence. So there was consequences for doing things wrong. You had to raise troops for fighting. And a quote from it: the prosperity of the country comes through its healthy condition, and the flourishing of the country comes through the granting of justice and punishment of oppressors. So being stern in how you did things was the way in which to create a healthy empire. And this was a primary source, from a Turkish official in the 18th century commenting on the traditional policies of the Sultan towards peasants, merchants, and government officials. So that was what he believed in. The second one is from the Safavids. It's a primary source from Father Paul Simon, a missionary to the Safavid court of Shah Abbas in the great city of Isfahan. And below is his report back to Pope Clement the Eighth in 1605. And so as you read that, you're reading a primary source. About this issue, and it says, explain what made the Safavid court more favorable, a formidable opponent in Western Asia. And again, he talked about, the Shah Abbas is very valiant and his great liking for warfare and weapons of war, which he is constantly in his hands. He was a fine soldier and very skilled, and he paid his soldiers. So if you pay your soldiers, they're going to fight a little bit better. And so he uses weapons himself, and that was what made him who he was. So what made the Safavid court a formidable opponent? The emperor was well trained in all of the weapons and was very valiant, and that made his soldiers more productive. And then lastly, you have the Mughals, and it's a secondary source. Written much later than all the other ones. And how does the budget outline what was valued and sought after in the Mughal Empire? And so as you look at it, it's kind of a breakdown of a table that shows the revenue and expenditures of 1595 and 1596 in this Mughal Empire. And, of the three, well, it would be of the How did I write that? Most of the money, let's put it that way, most of the money that was spent during that time was spent on the enlisted, heavily armed cavalry and regional troops. So you can see that most of the money equaled to 51% of the budget. This shows that the military was the most important and valuable thing in their uh, empire. If most of your money was spent on shoes or clothes or food, that would be the most important thing. Most of the money in the empire was spent on the military, and therefore you can see that they were more focused on how their military grew than how the infrastructure of the country was, or how well animals and things of like that were taken care of. It was all about the heavily armed cavalry and regional troops. And so uh, the Mughal Empire was very focused on their military, and that gives you a breakdown of how the nature of these gunpowder empires, how they got their name. That was what they were known for. I hope this helps. I hope you have some of this information on your graphic organizer, and you need to make sure you do your assignments for the rest of the week as well. We'll have videos like this, and I'll go over them in class, but you need to be working on your assignments and getting those done, getting those submitted, and then also adding to your study guide. Again, I hope this helps. And if you have any questions, send me an email. Have a great day.